Thinking back, Boulder Police Chief Stephen Redfern never thought he could work in law enforcement and be open about his sexuality. This summer, he proudly wore both identities on his uniform.
So we did this year in June, our first Pride badge, and it was super well received in the community.
The Pride badge is silver and gold, with several insignias, including the colors of the rainbow, set behind a mountain with Boulder Police written around it. He says over half his staff bought it. Redfern has worked in law enforcement for about 25 years. As a cadet, he spent thousands of hours riding with officers and heard every slur imaginable.
I thought I would never be able to be myself. I knew I wanted to be a cop. I was going to be a cop, but I thought I would have my work life and my personal life, and, never the two shall meet.
He was outed early in his career when he ran into several colleagues while on a date at a restaurant. The sky didn't fall, and it turned out fine. Redfern says he became the first openly gay officer with the Aurora PD, paving the way for other LGBTQ+ officers.
To me, it was kind of like I've got to pinch myself because we have made a lot of progress in a short amount of time.
3 years ago, Redfern was hired to be the Deputy Chief of Operations in Boulder and was promoted to Chief this September.
We've come a long way, I feel like, in Colorado, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Not everybody has the same experience of being able to be who they are. And until that happens, we've got to keep, I will continue to keep being hopefully visible and encouraging others to do so.
I'm Stephanie Daniel, and this is The Colorado Dream, Ending the Hate State. Colorado is considered one of the most LGBTQ+ friendly states in the country, but it wasn't always this accepting. This series investigates one of the darkest times in the state's recent history and the activism and legislation that followed. We'll share the stories of LGBTQ+ people and the allies who want to make the centennial state a welcoming place for all. This is episode 5, Hate State No More. In 1992, Redfern was a young teenager living with his family in Littleton. 40 miles north in Boulder lived another teen, Jared Polis. Polis was just a year away from voting age when Colorado voters approved Amendment 2, which prohibited protections for LGBTQ+ people.
I was 17. It banned anti-discrimination statutes. It's kind of a double negative, but it basically said you can't have anti-discrimination statutes.
The young future governor was bewildered, and so was the nation.
I certainly remember all the, in the media calling us the hate state. It didn't feel good to be called that.
The hate state. That was Colorado's new nickname. Amendment 2 passed, and the nation turned its eyes to Colorado. What was going on over there? The state they knew for freedom-loving ranchers and Rocky Mountain highs. Polis says he never thought the hate state label fit. Even when Colorado showed perhaps its worst side, he says things happened here that young gay people could look to and be proud of.
1975, actually the same year I was born in Boulder, not too far from there, the Boulder County Courthouse, Clerk Cleo Lorax issued the first 5 same-sex marriage certificates.
Polis graduated from Princeton in 1996. The same year, Amendment 2 was struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court. There began a political progression that brings us from the hate state to a place where Polis himself is a symbol of Colorado's commitment to equality. Sitting in a conference room near his office at the state capitol, Polis reflects on where Colorado is today, a state that elected him, the nation's first openly gay governor.
I mean, we're getting LGBT refugees from Florida and Texas, and it's sad that in this day and age that's the case, but it is. People who come here to have their families or to get gender-confirming care. So, I mean, this is, where we are today, and Colorado is very much on the map as a place that allows people to be who they are.
Colorado has changed a lot since the hate state boycotts in the early 90s. Still, while varying sexual identities have become more accepted, the topic of gender has emerged as a political issue. For Jack Teeter, these changes have been personal. 10 years ago, he started his gender transition while working as a legislative aide.
And it felt like a time, even though I was transitioning in sort of the center of politics in the state of Colorado at the state capitol, it did not yet feel like the mere fact of being trans was a political thing. And so it wasn't a thing.
Jack was the first trans staffer at the State House, working for a lawmaker from Colorado Springs.
It is a workplace imbued with lots of traditions and dress codes and things like that. And so I remember having a conversation with the sergeant at arms for the House of Representatives who enforced decorum about how if I was going to wear a men's suit on the floor, I had to also wear a tie, which is totally fair.
Jack told his parents, told his boss, changed his outfit, and then went back to work after Christmas in January of 2015 with new pronouns and a new badge.
And that was it. And then it was fine. And then I just was Jack.
Now, Jack says trans people generally have to navigate layers of political red tape. Some states have passed laws restricting their health care, and in others, getting updated identification documents can also be difficult after transitioning.
And I think now that has accelerated even further where, especially for students in schools, which are a government institution, where your ability to access a fair education is going to be influenced by a group of local elected officials on your school board who might have power over your life in all these ways.
He is referring to gender-related legislative efforts in some states focused on issues like curriculum, bathroom usage, and pronoun disclosure. Here in Colorado, legislation has generally moved in the opposite direction, particularly after 2018, when Governor Polis was elected and Democrats took over the State House. For years before that, Jack remembers Democrats running a bill over and over again to make it easier for transgender Coloradans to update their identification documents. The initial version of that bill, drafted in 2015, was the first transgender-specific legislation to be introduced in the state.
We would show up and we would tell our stories and bring documents, and families would come with their children and adults would come, and everyone would really be incredibly vulnerable and put our lives on display for these legislators. And then the Republicans would vote no.
In 2019, the bill called Jude's Law passed.
We were able to pass all sorts of stuff that had stalled out on, just this party line vote over and over and over again.
Last year, Colorado became the first state to require health insurance providers to cover gender-affirming care. And under a new law, schools are now required to use a transgender student's chosen name. Still, this doesn't mean things are going well for everyone. Jack says some districts won't let students form GSA clubs, genders and sexualities alliances. Some are trying to ban books.
To a certain extent, we can't prevent those things from happening, but we have the policy and legal infrastructure in place so that when they do happen, people have the law on their side.
But queer folks need to be able to trust in law enforcement in order to benefit from these laws. When Stephen Redfern began working with the Boulder PD 3 years ago, the department's LGBTQ+ liaison had just left. They replaced that person with 3 more liaison officers of different ranks.
We're trying to get past the traditional issues that the LGBTQ+ and other communities have had where they don't trust police. They don't feel comfortable if they're a victim that they're going to be taken seriously.
This liaison program started several years earlier thanks to a chance encounter between a Boulder PD officer and Marty Moore, the executive director of Rocky Mountain Equality, which is based in the city.
The fear for the LGBTQ community calling law enforcement is baked into who we are. And the work is really trying to change that because we all deserve justice and we all deserve safety.
She says this fear stems back to an incident in New York City in June 1969. Local police raided a gay club called the Stonewall Inn, which led to days of protests and violent clashes between bar patrons, neighborhood residents, and officers. The uprising galvanized the gay rights movement in the U.S. and around the world. A year later, on the first anniversary, the first Pride marches were held in New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. Fast forward to 2016, to the mass shooting at Pulse, an LGBTQ+ nightclub in Florida. 49 people were killed. Marty was in Boulder at the time.
I didn't have a relationship with the police department prior to the massacre at Pulse. And that day when we pulled a gathering together of community leaders and community members, A police officer showed up to close down the streets because there were so many of us.
That police officer was a gay man named Kevin Marples. He and Marty forged a bond that day.
People historically would call Marty, right? This happened to me. This was horrible. It was a crime. But they didn't want to report, right? They didn't trust law enforcement. And Marty had no one to sort of hand that off to.
Marty says queer folks used to reach out to her instead of calling the police. After the presidential inauguration in 2017, a slew of hate crimes were reported to Rocky Mountain Equality. In the beginning, Marty would connect people to Kevin and sit in on conversations. Eventually, she reached out to the Boulder PD's deputy chief to set up a more formal partnership. The Safety and Pride Project was born.
Detective Kevin Marples became our first liaison.
Kevin left law enforcement 2 years ago, but still manages the Safety and Pride Project. He says as they work together, word about the liaison program spread, and more front-range law enforcement agencies signed on. In 2022, Safety and Pride received a federal grant, which helped expand it. The program gives a baseline understanding about gender, pronouns, and other useful information so they can better serve LGBTQ+ victims or suspects.
So a big topic we've discussed is, right, how do you document someone who comes in and says, my name is Susan Smith, she, her pronouns, and has a driver's license that says David Smith?
Kevin says the legal and report writing systems weren't set up to handle this discrepancy. But that has changed with a simple fix. An officer will take this victim statement and include a sentence that the victim will be referred to as Susan Smith and use she, her pronouns for the remainder of the report.
And that one sentence connects the driver's license that's in the report and the formal documentation with the written report so that when the victim or someone's reading that, they feel heard.
This change helps everyone who interacts with Susan throughout the judicial process.
So that when Susan calls in and is talking about her case, you can just sort of come from a position of education and knowledge. Coming
up, we ask Governor Polis if Colorado has moved beyond the hate state. But first, we learn about the ballroom scene, an LGBTQ+ subculture that provides a safe haven.
For a lot of queer and trans people of color, we do not have access or strong relationships with our biological families, and so these become our queer or our trans families.
That's after the break.
In the NoCo is KUNC's News and Culture podcast. It's a great way to stay informed on the issues that matter most to our Colorado communities.
When people have the opportunity to help in a disaster, especially when they're fellow survivors, this can actually help with their own mental health and emotional recovery after the disaster.
I'm In the NoCo host Erin O'Toole. Follow the podcast for free at kunc.org or anywhere you like to listen to podcasts.
I'm Stephanie Daniel, and this is The Colorado Dream, Ending the Hate State from KUNC News. As Colorado has evolved from the hate state to one of the most progressive, it's allowed LGBTQ+ folks the freedom to express themselves in different ways. One outlet is the ballroom scene.
So, circle round. Where'd Mitchell go?
It's a warm Monday night in June, and the Kiki House of Felicity is hosting its weekly session in a cozy studio space in Denver. It starts with a check-in. The house members sit closely together on the floor as house mother Soleil kicks it off.
What is most on top? Try to stick to the biggest thing. What do you need? Anyone's free to start.
The biggest thing is my family's in town, and that has been a lot, and thankfully it's going well. Could be way worse.
You might remember Soleil from the second episode of this podcast. There, she was introduced as Saya B. However, in ballroom, she's known as Soleil. This house functions as a family for its members and a way to express themselves. The check-in is done. Now it's time for the mock ball.
Do what you need to do to warm up. Get into your first effect or your only effect.
Soleil instructs them to put on their effects, which are the costumes, the appearance, the whole presentation, and get ready to walk.
Category is face. We're ready now. All right, judges, y'all ready? Period. Let's get in.
Some of the family are walking or competing in the upcoming Colorado Pride Kiki Ball. So this is an opportunity to practice and get feedback.
Take your time. You're beautiful, darling. Yes, 10s across. Thank you. Stand to the side.
This is ballroom culture. Ballroom began in the late 1960s with Black and Latinx queer and trans communities in New York City. The first house of ballroom, the House of LaBeija, was started by Crystal LaBeija as an alternative to the drag pageant scene, which she said was racist. Ballroom has since become a part of pop culture, thanks to Madonna's hit song Vogue and TV shows like RuPaul's Drag Race and Pose. Ballroom is known for its houses that have a house mother and father, and its balls. At these events, people walk as representatives of their houses in different categories like Vogue, Runway, and Realness to win trophies and prize money. Soleil is a Black, non-binary femme who grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas. She moved to Denver in 2017 to attend graduate school and never left. When Soleil discovered the local ballroom scene a few years later, she had found the Black and brown queer folks she was craving.
And this was very beginning of the ballroom era in Denver. And for me, I was seeking community. And this was the platform, a way to do that. And through that, I also realized how much liberation I would gain from it as well.
There are 3 mainstream ballroom houses in Colorado. In 2021, Soleil joined the Denver chapter of the Royal House of LaBeija. A year later, she founded the Kiki House of Felicity, one of 4 Kiki houses in the Metro Denver area.
Kiki is minor leagues, entry level for fun. The stakes really shouldn't be that high. And ideally, you would spend some time in the Kiki scene, develop your craft, and then go into the mainstream.
Now, 2 years later, Soleil takes a lot of pride in being part of the ballroom scene. People respect her pronouns and identity. She says she's admired for who she is and what she's doing for the community. This includes being a Kiki House mother.
And I also get to witness the growth and the transformation of other folks that, were like me, but needed that extra layer of support to really, figure out who they are beyond just even gender and sexuality, but who they are as a human and as an adult, and watch them start businesses or just get their nails done for the first time or wear a heel for the first time, and just watch those transformations.
Gloria's Felicity is one of these house members going through a transformation. When I meet up with Glo, it's July and it's hot. She's dressed in short shorts, a patterned shirt, and black baseball cap. Her stiletto-shaped nails are freshly manicured.
I've been getting my nails done for almost 5 to 6 months now, and they've been really helping because I bite my nails a lot.
They're painted with geometric shapes in different colors. Each color represents members of the Kiki House of Felicity.
They really mean a lot to me. So looking at my nails and looking at the colors, it feels like they're always with me.
In 2022, Glo met Soleil at a ballroom workshop and was the first child to join the Kiki House of Felicity. This house has become a salvation, especially after growing up in a country where it is illegal to be queer.
I'm an Arab man, so brown Arab man.
Glorious was born and raised in Saudi Arabia, the second youngest of 7 kids. Growing up, she loved to dance, lip-sync to Britney and Beyonce, and watch RuPaul's Drag Race. But living in a very religious household, she had to hide that part of herself. Glo came to Colorado 8 years ago for college, and despite her parents' wishes to return home, she stayed here after graduation.
Instead, I wrote this whole letter to my mom and dad, and only my mom and dad that I sent it to, about me kind of coming out.
Her parents and a few siblings didn't take the news well. Still, this past summer, Glo's mom and a sister and her kids decided to visit.
Because my mom wanted to come and check on me, because she said that if you're not coming, then I'll get my visa and I'll just go see you.
Hours before they arrived, Glo took off her nails. The earrings came off too. The booty shorts and crop tops were put away.
Yeah, all of that was put in a box and hid away.
Thankfully, she says, she has the Kiki House of Felicity. Back at the Kiki House of Felicity session, it's time to vogue. Both Soleil and Glorious will walk this at the Pride Kiki Ball, but under different gender subcategories. To practice, they battle each other. The two friends move down the runway, duck walking, dipping, and spinning to the beat. At a ball, the goal is to get 10s from the judges and move on to battle in the next round. The following Sunday, Glorious walked Butch Queen Vogue Femme in the Pride Kiki Ball at the University of Colorado Boulder. She wore a purple crop top and skirt with black thigh-high stiletto boots. There was one other competitor in that category, and Glow ended up losing.
We both got our 10s, and then we battled, and they won that battle.
Glow's family was in town during the ball, but she didn't invite them. She had a lot of good times with her mom, but also some hard conversations. In the end, the visit helped their relationship. Glow can be more open with her mom, but not with her dad.
I told her that's exactly why I'm not going back home, because here I can openly be myself unapologetically. It kind of puts things into perspective of seeing what being loved costs in one space and then the same in the other space. With my family, it costs a lot. It costs me my appearance, it costs me my authenticity, it costs me my love for myself. And in the other space with Felicity, it costs nothing.
In the ballroom scene, Glorious is embraced and accepted. That's the type of Colorado political leaders and LGBTQ+ advocates say they've spent the past 5 years trying to build.
Well, 2019 is really we started to see the change in the protections that we had in the state.
That's Nadine Bridges, the executive director of One Colorado, the state's leading LGBTQ+ advocacy organization.
You can go from being a hate state to the state with the most protections.
Colorado is a sanctuary state, a safe place for abortion care, immigrant rights, and gender-affirming care. But Nadine says there is so much more to do.
We want to make sure that we are filling in any gaps, that we're protecting trans community, non-binary, gender-expansive folks, as well as educating our elected officials and community members on the issues that impact our community, and get them to fully understand why it's important to protect us at all levels.
2019 was the first full year Jared Polis was governor. He arrived at the state capitol with a Democratic legislature and attorney general. And as we've heard, he's used some of his political power to do the very thing people behind Amendment 2 wanted to stop and prevent: protecting the rights of queer and trans people.
It's been gradual progress. I mean, certainly banning so-called conversion therapy for underage people who were forced to go to very traumatic treatments where they were, often traumatized for life. That no longer occurs in our state. We've made a lot of progress with very strong anti-discrimination protections.
But the path away from the hate state has been rocky and sometimes tragic. 2 years ago this month, 5 people were killed during a shooting at an LGBTQ+ bar in Colorado Springs. Meanwhile, political rhetoric against queer people is on the rise.
It's become popular on the right, particularly to attack transgender Americans, and almost like they treat it like it's somehow an ideology. And I think it's bizarre because there's no gay ideology, there's no transgender ideology. It's just the diversity of the human experience.
What saddens him, he says, are recent court rulings. Last year, the U.S. Supreme Court opened the door to overturning some LGBTQ+ anti-discrimination protections when it ruled that a web designer's company could refuse to work with same-sex couples.
It is sad that we're losing a lot of the national protections that we wanted to take for granted, leaving it up to the role of states like Colorado, like many other states that I like to think and I hope are in the vanguard of protecting people to be themselves, to be individuals. It's very consistent with our Western identities, the proud individualism that we all have.
On November 5th, Colorado voters will once again consider a constitutional amendment focused on people's sexuality. Amendment J removes a ban on same-sex marriage that was enacted in 2006. Colorado is one of about 30 states with this constitutional ban. If the measure passes, LGBTQ+ people will have the freedom to marry whoever they want, even if the highest court in the land one day repeals this right.
Colorado's a place where you can be who you are, and in a Colorado for all, love who you love, and live life the way that you want to on your own terms.
The Colorado Dream, Ending the Hate State, is a production from KUNC News. It's hosted and produced by me, Stephanie Daniel. This episode was written and reported by me and Lee Patterson, with additional reporting from Scott Franz. Editing by Sean Corcoran. The theme song was composed by Jason Patton. Michelle Rado sound designed and mixed the episode. Jennifer Coombs is the digital editor. Special thanks to Trayvell Anderson, Jen De La Fuente, Gabe Allen, Brad Turner, Kim Race, Robert Leja, and Mike Arnold. Tammy Turwelp is KUNC's president and CEO. The Colorado Dream is sponsored by the Colorado Community College System. To see photos of the people included in this episode and learn more about the terminology we used, go to kunc.org/Colorado Dream or check out the show notes for a link.